and posted in the first week of September. The 2021 Education Finance System Report, EFS, unaudited, was filed on time by September 1st of 2021 and posted. In regard to the specifics about the end-of-year budget condition for 2020-21, I'm going to briefly describe the condition, which is reflected in the budget gap plan for 21-22 that I shared with the board members. The operating budget ended in a surplus condition. The final surplus was moved to the Internal Service Fund to be on deposit for withdrawal when needed. We did not need to withdraw any funds from the Internal Service Fund in 2021 in order to balance the budget. In regard to food and nutrition services, as you'll recall, we had been taking steps to counteract an anticipated shortfall. In the end, the budget ended the year with a positive balance of $875,812. We had initially waived the charging of indirect cost and the cost of retirees' health insurance for food and nutrition in the 2021 FNS budget in order to counteract the forecasted trend toward a deficit. And that is why I'm referring to the end-of-year condition as a positive balance rather than a surplus. And we moved that positive balance into the Internal Service Fund. In summary, the Internal Service Fund currently has on deposit as a district reserve the following amounts. We have the $2 million that we had been carrying forward as the pre-Connecticut Partnership or pre-1819 component, so that's $2 million. At the end of 2019-20, our first pandemic year, we added $6.5 million. At the end of 2021, we have added $10.8 million. And we have added the positive balance achieved in the food and nutrition budget of $875,812. So the grand total is in the Internal Service Fund is approximately $20 million. Now, it's important to understand that from that amount, which I'm going to call the district reserve, currently, as part of our 21-22 plan, we have committed $9.5 million to closing the 21-22 budget gap. And that leaves a balance of approximately $10.6 million, which will be on hold for withdrawal at a time in the future when needed to balance the budget and hopefully to counteract the fiscal cliff that is forecast in the coming years. Now, it's also important to understand that the funds committed to closing the 21-22 gap include the rising cost of special education services, including the opening of new classes and additional related services. And we are going to utilize grant funds, including the ESSER grants, to the optimal extent practical, wherever appropriate and permissible to do so in accordance with guidelines, to offset operational expenses. So wherever it's permissible to do so and we can maintain legal compliance with guidelines, we will do so. For example, there are 9 additional special education resource teacher positions that were allocated in the current year, 21-22, compared to the prior year. And those positions arose as a result of the impact of the COVID pandemic on the education of our students. And so these positions are funded in the ESSER grants. And so in final summary, as we move forward in 21-22, our original monetary need was forecast to be approximately $17 million. We have, as shown in the budget gap plan that I shared with the Finance Committee, in that gap plan, we show revenue from the city, $2 million, from the state, approximately $1.5 million, for a grand total of $3.5 million in revenue. The balance of $13.5 million is obtained through 3 components. The first is the Internal Service Fund, projected at $9.5 million. And I'll come back to that in a moment. I just want to make one final comment about it in a moment. The second component would be other grant funds, where we have grant eligible expenses charged to those accounts, such as Title I or Title IIA or Title IV, in accordance with guidelines, so that we don't have to use operating funds. And the third component is the deficit prevention mode that we have been in continuously over the last 10 years. And deficit prevention mode means simply that we implement standard operating practices for stringent cost control and management. We capture accrued funds in all areas, and we build reserves to support a balanced budget, and we leverage our funds across all sources in order to achieve optimal utilization to meet our needs and maximize rollover capacity, so that we have the capability to close a budget gap. Now, I just want to make one final comment about the Internal Service Fund figure of $9.5 million. That number may be less in the end, at the end of year for 21-22. Perhaps it will be $9 million. Perhaps it will be $8.5 million. It's too soon in the year to make a forecast. But at this moment in time, based on current data and current fiscal trends, I'm not anticipating that it's going to go higher. In all likelihood, it may be lower. And that outcome would mean additional funds available in the Internal Service Fund to close a gap in 22-23. And I'll only look forward one more year at this point. I've concluded my remarks. Are there any questions?
That's fine. Yes, okay. Approximately how much would be our operating deficit if we weren't covering all the costs? About a roundabout figure.
Let's just take those components that I just mentioned. Let's see, 5.5, 7.5. I would say about $9.5 million.
About $9.5 million. So once basically the ISF and COVID funds that we're using to cover, or ESSER funds, excuse me, run out.
Yes, because we're meeting our monetary need with new revenue from the state and the city, grand total $3.5 million. We remain in deficit prevention mode. We do have teacher vacancies. We have paraprofessional vacancies, which are covered by subs wherever possible, and there are lower costs associated with coverage by subs. As I have indicated repetitively over the last few years, when that situation occurs, it's not happening by design. It's happening by happening due to the fact that there are not certified teachers available or qualified individuals to be considered to fill other types of positions. So with the savings from coverage by subs and vacancies, as well as the other controls that we have in place to ensure stringent, to ensure rigorous management of fiscal matters. We usually can save approximately $2 million through deficit prevention mode.
All right, so this year accounts for approximately 9 million. Is it fair to say if we're in the same exact fiscal position year to year to year that we'll have basically close to a $27 million ask for 2025 or 4? I get confused with the overlapping years, 1, 2, 3.
Well, we're carrying
24,
forward.
25.
24, 25. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, the 24, 25 fiscal year, that's when funding runs out, correct? And then we'll have, that's when the cliff is facing us. And if everything stays as is, we're looking at, if it's 9 every year, we're going to be $27 million. But I'm
Yes,
assuming some things will change. Maybe it'd be, that's.
We're anticipating a cliff if we don't continue to advocate for funding both from state and local government. So we're going to continue to beat down the doors. I don't think, and there has been some talk, obviously, that at the end of this federal influx of dollars that the state is going to do this or do that. Do I have assurances? Do we have any guarantees? Absolutely not. The folks making those promises today probably will not be there or may not be there, we'll say, when the time comes to cover the costs. So I think we can continue to fight, continue to advocate for more money from the state, more money from the city, and use these federal dollars for what they're intended for acceleration, for enrichment, for intervention, for facility upgrades, and all the things that are related to the COVID-19 virus.
And I think it would behoove us to have a representative from the board to testify publicly in front of the city council and the state and raise up these numbers and a climbing deficit every year. So in fiscal year 24, 25, we don't have people saying, you never told us. We have it on record, publicly disclosed that this was coming and that they needed to step up now rather than later.
I think, and I'm hoping that they start to have some more in-person meetings. They haven't had those at the city council level, from what I understand, even as recently as this week. There has not been any invites to committee meetings outside of the norm that usually we're brought in to talk about education. So I'm hoping as after November, maybe we can begin to start laying the groundwork for what you're saying, Mr. Smith.
Yeah, definitely need an education campaign with the education budget. It's very misunderstood. And
I can't
see we hear the same thing. Where does the money go? It seems we have a hard time getting people to understand when you have a $10 million increase in salaries and pension costs and all that. The first place it goes is there. So if you give us $8 million, that means it's going to $2 million in cuts.
Well, I have begun just, informally. I've spoken to Jim Himes's office, Congressman Himes. I've spoken to Senator Moore. I've spoken to Representative Philippe. I have a scheduled meeting with Representative Staffstrom around some of the things that you're discussing, but more targeted toward giving us a competitive edge in terms of paying teachers and support staff in order to retain folks. I have a plan that I've shared with them. I've also enlisted some other folks in the last 2 weeks to help beat this drum with me. So we're hoping that this could be a way that that will relieve the burden from the Bridgeport Public Schools, the Hartford Public Schools, Newman, Waterbury, also the rural towns, from having to be continually poached of high quality teachers. So this conversation has begun, and it's going to continue to go until somebody listens. So I can just guarantee you that.
Just a quick pause, let the record reflect. Chairman John Weldon has joined the meeting, and Board Member Albert Bedahan has joined the meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, we're going to need action to push this to the full board.
I think, Bob,
Yeah, that
Where are you?
The first.
first one.
Budget?
Budget closeout. Well, we could, I guess we could push it anyway.
2021?
Yeah, 21, 22.
In 21, 22.
Correct.
We just started the 21, 22 budget.
That's for this year, right? That's the one we need.
No,
Yeah.
it says closeout. Are you talking about closing out the last fiscal year?
We just got the update on the closeout, correct?
Ending June 30th, 2021.
Correct.
So this agenda item really,
Did I miss right?
2021.
The 2020.
We're currently in 21, 22.
Correct.
We're in the third month.
And this is the budget going forward for this year.
Yes. So you're talking about approving
Approved, yeah.
coming budget?
Yes, you're
Or
correct.
closing out the last budget?
You're correct. I miswrote it. So I don't
It's
think.
okay, I'm just saying.
Yeah, no, you're right. But technically, I guess we can't push it, but we could just put it on the agenda next.
Yes.
We can,
Yeah,
but I'm saying, but have we even closed out?
That should be.
Yes, we
Yeah,
got that.
that was closed out. That was
We did, okay.
Yes.
that was a mistake on
So
my
this is
part.
an adoption of the current year budget.
You're correct.
Okay.
We'll make sure we put that on the full board agenda.
It's worded properly. Thank you.
I'll take care of that.
Okay, now, next item on the agenda is the update on the Sr and Arp Funds.
Well, we have submitted our ARP ESSER application to the state. Some districts have been approved already, some have not yet. It all depends who the readers are, from what I've been given feedback. I do have a brief meeting tomorrow scheduled by the deputy commissioner. I'm not sure who's going to participate from the state side, just to give some feedback. You know, a lot of the things that we met over the summer and got approvals from the board are part of the ARP ESSER plan. But we're just waiting for full approval from the state before we can bring it to the board. You guys can memorialize it and we can place it on the Bridgeport Public Schools website.
So this article I saw yesterday was a little
Yeah, I was just going to.
misleading. Said everybody's been accepted.
That was for the ESSER 2.
Oh,
The article yesterday, yes, that came out yesterday. Everyone was accepted for ESSER 2. As you can see, we were recognized as a school district for some of our innovative response to the COVID-19 pandemic, as were other districts in different areas. We will continue to strive to meet the needs of all our students and families, but it's nice that out of 169 districts, we are one of the very few that have been recognized. And, you know, in my superintendent's report, there's a lot of things to update on Monday, but a lot of it is around our student support and the work we're doing around attendance and chronic absenteeism that we've become a model in terms of how we've been handling this and how we've worked closely with our staff, with our families and our students throughout the pandemic. So a lot to be proud of. It's been a monumental effort, but it's good that the efforts have been recognized.
yeah, I was looking through the list of all the purchases and stuff. How much supplies do we have on hand? Do we have an adequate amount of supplies for, say, safety, cleaning?
Yes, so we do have, we're very proactive like we were in response in the spring of 2020. We were proactive in getting good pricing on PPE, cleaning supplies and everything. So we do have, between what's on Connecticut Avenue, and we're starting to shift, and we've begun to shift some of our reserves over to the storage area at Park City Magnet. Paul Washington is great in getting supplies out to schools. We've been very proactive with our building principals and our head custodians, not to wait until you've run out of anything, as you hit a threshold to make sure you re-up. And we get constant updates from facilities on our inventory. So if anything does start to run low, we'll be proactive in being able to acquire the supplies we need.
Shanahan, you have any questions?
We just placed an order just to be proactive. I know some people noticed when we had the PAC PTSO meeting, leader meeting last week, We have begun to install in all our school cafeterias, air purification units. And we will now, we've secured an order for every classroom and every office to receive one that's tailored to the size of those rooms. It's a great product. It purifies, it turns the air over at 3 to 6 times an hour, which meets all the recommendations for air purity. And this is going to help not only with COVID-19, any other germs and bacteria that are floating in the air.
Chair,
Yes.
I have a question. Does this study, all this equipment and everything you say is count, where they coming, the budget's coming from where?
Federal
From, sorry?
federal dollars.
Or federal dollars? So it's not coming from the Title I and grant, nothing from the PAC and PDS, so.
All the money that's been allocated through the federal government for ventilation, air, and air quality.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Brown?
No questions.
Mr. Weldon? Yeah, just one final question. Going forward, we got to do a 6-month update. How far into that are we?
Well, the application was due on August 14th. We technically haven't been approved yet. So I would say
You said August 14th?
August 14th, yeah. So, I mean, to be proactive, I would say that we should probably wait till after the Christmas holiday break, when people are not distracted by the holidays. Maybe early January, we have another public forum. We put out some more, maybe not a survey, so to speak, but more of a feedback request of the community, of the staff, to be able to garner some information from them. I think what's important to note here is that this is not money that needs to be spent fast. I think that's, something that's foolish to think that we're going to put together over the course of a summer, a plan on spending all this money over the next 3 years. For example, we have our schools are putting plans and proposals in for extended day programs, different things at different schools based on the needs of those particular schools that we will fund. They then need to collect data, show the impact it's had on their students in order to come back and ask for more money. So, we're trying to be very thoughtful. We're trying to be very creative and innovative as the plan should reflect. But we also want to be very responsible, that we're not just going out there and, throwing dollars around without any return on our investment from a student growth and social emotional growth, academic growth perspective.
Absolutely. Yeah, and because I bring that up just because of a recent article in the paper, once again, about people wanted more input, and there was an adequate chance for input. It was well publicized. It's actually in the newspaper that these meetings were going to take place. So anybody that didn't have a seat at the table just couldn't find a table. The table was there, it was set, and I just want to ensure it's set again. The same set of welcome. There's going to be no engraved invitations for any special group. Every parent, taxpayer in the city is in equal stead, including the groups. So I ask everybody to keep a lookout for those and just show up. It's a matter of just showing up and coming to the table.
I think there's a couple of things worth noting on what you just mentioned. Number one, it's a seat at the table, not all the seats at the table. There's no one group, one organization, or one school or one community that has more influence or more say than anyone else. I think it has to be very clear. And number two, it's gathering the information, listening to the input, sitting down, and then afterwards asking questions on what is happening. And throughout the next several months, as we have reports done at committee meetings, reporting out at board meetings, we will give updates on all the creative ways and all the things that we heard and how we've implemented it and how we're either are getting things off the ground, how we're growing, how we're succeeding, and where our failures are and how we're going to readjust in order to do better. So I think it's premature to say in the second week in September that people weren't heard. They were heard loud and clear. We've spent a lot of time and effort and money on social emotional support for students. We're in the planning stage for staff as well, to give them an opportunity. We're deep in on professional development, especially with our administrators for the first time in probably over a decade of really, really focusing on teaching and learning in our schools. So, I think people need to be patient. This isn't going to be an overnight process. It's going to be a journey over the next 3+ years on really giving students the support and the things that they require in order to grow academically and social emotionally. So and a lot of the things, if they pay attention to board meetings, have come through the board already for board approval, because we want to be open, we want to be transparent. It's just, I think what you said, that there are some folks that want to have a louder voice, and unfortunately, that's not how we operate here. Everybody has an equal voice.
Disagree. Fortunately, that's not how we operate. Bobby, any questions?
No questions.
No questions there.
Mr. Chair. Okay, next item up on the agenda. So discussion and possible action on entering into a joint committee with the city of Bridgeport concerning the pooling of ARP and ESSER funds. And so I wanted this before the committee just to get a better idea of what we were facing on the board, because if it's going to be set up anything like the school building committee, we need to actually set this up.
I used that as kind of an example.
Right, yeah.
It's a little different.
Yeah, and I was
It's
just
more of a staff level, as I understand it, staff level selection committee who evaluates proposals that get received for a very small portion. I'll let you talk about it, but I think it's not as big as
No.
people have been led to believe.
No, so the city, I guess, in their planning to utilize the monies, that federal dollars they received, was to put it in a number of buckets, one being youth. And that being said, given the large population here in Bridgeport, the number of students and the needs of our students and our children, they were dedicating a certain dollar amount and asked if the Board of Education would match it. We had some discussions, and I guess after and they put out the RFP in all the different buckets, which was a big help for us because we don't have the capacity to put out the RFP and then have to go through, they got an overwhelming number of applicants into the portal.
Just for different things, or?
Yeah, for the youth and, everything. But I know in the youth portal, they got a lot of response.
In the youth portal, are there different programs?
Different programs put in proposals.
Different proposals for different programs.
Right.
In the youth category.
Correct. So they upped their amount to $3.5 million per year. We were going to contribute $2 million a year. This way we can fund as a city Board of Ed initiative more of these programs, because at initial look, there was some really good programs out there. So my ask was that we were overly represented as a Board of Ed in approving which proposals are accepted and giving out the money, maybe not the entire funding that is requested, but maybe partial, but that we would have the majority of vote, simply because we want to make sure that if there's going to be $2 million of Board of Ed funds, we want to make sure that that percentage of Bridgeport Public School students are being serviced in these programs that from the proposals that were sent in. I don't need a proposal that services, one Bridgeport Public School kid and 42 Catholic school kids. No disrespect to those kids, but that $2 million of our money is going to be reflected. So that's why I put out that I think 2 board members would possibly serve on this committee, and a couple of other staff members from the district side. And then the city would have a couple of representatives to make sure that they had some say as well. And we could have productive discussion if there was any disagreement.
I've got an issue of outsized and all that, because there is a separate proportion of dollars specifically allocated for the charter schools, correct? They've got their own cutout of ESER 3.
Yeah, I wasn't really looking at what they got or didn't get, the charters. I know that the money that was ours, and it wasn't going to be allocated out.
And it sounds like now that with this team up for the city, some of our $2 million allocation possibly getting split out towards
Well, if,
Catholic schools or what have you.
well, not to the schools themselves.
I mean,
It would be a program, so if
but as
the
of
McGivney Center put in a proposal that they were going to do a tutoring program, we would have to ensure and receive the data, beginning and end of how many kids, who was registered in the program, and if those kids, cross-referencing with data management were our kids.
But as of right now, every single dollar of that $2 million is in Bridgeport Public School students' use, available for Bridgeport Public student uses.
Correct. The only difference is, how then, if we wanted to do something like this, how would we want to disperse? Because there should be some, and we've already begun this, with Caribe and some other organizations in partnering, having the schools operate some extended day programs. But really putting out an RFP and trying to be overwhelmed, I think this would be a good way to partner with more community sites with some of the dollars as the outline of the money is. There needs to be that partnering without putting that all on our staff to try to manage, because I think it's a lot to manage.
I have no issue with the partnership.
Yeah, no.
But I've got issues with moving the dollars out, because we already have a lot of dollars are getting siphoned off by these via transportation, special education expenses, and I would hate to see more of the money dedicated just for us going out the door when we could better utilize it for our students. Is there a way that we could do this partnership with them in our building and bring these programs to our building with making sure
Sure.
the great majority, the overwhelming majority, not 50, 60, 40, but 98% of those dollars.
Well, I think that's why being on the committee and having more of a representation will help dictate which of those programs we want to send the money to. Maybe if somebody puts in a proposal, for example, for $400,000, and we don't see that $400,000 worth of services, is maybe then we cut that back. So I think we have a lot of say in how that money gets dictated to whom and how they will service our kids. So
I think that was kind of the rationale behind having a couple of board members
yes,
on this committee.
But
So that those who were interested, had an interest in this, like you expressed, you had an interest in it. So you could see for yourself where this was going. Was it really servicing people that we're here to serve? If you felt it wasn't, then you would have an ability to try to influence.
or say no, and the city
No,
could
we're
say,
not
we're going to
doing this.
override you, but we won't touch any of the dollars
Your money.
of yours.
So
We really still believe in this.
Right. So they could fund it themselves,
Right.
and you could say, sorry, I don't want anything to do with
So
it.
who would head the committee? Because the school building, like, what do you use as an example with the school building committee? It's understandable that the city heads that one because it's all their money going in there. It's understandable.
Usually,
I
The
think,
assumption was that it would be me and
Okay.
as the chair of this committee. Because since we are the main entity and when it comes to youth, it would fall on our laps. So it'd either be me or a designee, or it could be one of the board members. But I think, or a co-chair but I think it has to be on our side or. all
it's
bets are off.
usually these kinds of things, not so much there's a chair, there's a facilitator,
Right.
gets all the information. Like
Sure.
But when I oversee selection committees, I'm not really the chair. I'm just making sure everybody follows the rules. Nobody does anything that they shouldn't, and that everybody's kind of thinking in the same way. And that's the kind of thing I think would be happening here, is that some objective third party, whether it's even somebody from the purchasing office, is making sure that everybody's doing what they should, the way they should, even-handedly.
and finally, the $2 million in board money, that's going to remain within our budget. It's not going to be locked in like some special budget to like a joint budget, maybe a joint account or something? It's not gonna be transferred over to the city, transferred out of our budget into theirs, or?
I can have Marlene work with the city side folks on how
The funds have to remain in our ESSER grants. The city
Right.
would either charge the grants directly through journal entry or provide us with information for charging the grants directly.
there you go.
Okay, so we're not ceding,
The funds will remain in our account.
so we're not ceding control over $1.
No.
And that was my main concern.
No.
Mr. Benahan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Siston, I have own questions for you. I'm gonna give you the questions and then you can give me the answer, at the same time. Okay with you with that? So the first one, I'd like to know whose idea, who was the idea? Why is they want us to be partnering? What's going on? Let's see each side. Let's see, give a sample. I'll give a sample. The BOE us made decision on something, and the city said, no, we don't want you this decision. And then you know how the city they are. Oh, we the majority, we the city, we the give it the money. So we had to make this decision. Sometimes they work like that. I just want to bring it to you what's going to happen in that situation, and who's what is the benefit for us? We're going to give a benefit, for BOE for our community. So I just
A couple of things. The initial, the city approached me if we would be interested as they were starting to put together the different buckets that they were going to put out RFPs for. I thought it was a good idea on a couple of fronts. Number one, we would have more community collaboration in terms of delivery of services. Offering all these things takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of manpower. And being able to put out an RFP ourselves is time consuming. We have to go through our steps. So that was how it initiated. I thought it was a great idea so that we can have more community partners in this work. Number two, I think your question was,
why they want to be why they want us to be partner.
I think if they put in, initially it was going to be 2 million. With $2 million, you can only disperse 2 million. With $4 million, you have more reach. You can reach more community partners and reach more youth, hopefully. When they saw the overwhelming response, they said, you don't have to match us. We're going to go up to 3.5 million because we think that there's more programs out there that are worthwhile funding, which is fine. They're not looking for a match on that. And I think the benefits are, number one, I think getting more community-based organizations involved in servicing youth. There are a lot of them that are involved now through Lighthouse, but there are a lot more kids that could be impacted positively if we're able to disperse and fund some of these smaller programs and they have an ability to grow a little bit. And when it comes to final decision, there's not going to be an override from the city. We are the city. That wasn't the discussion that we had. We were going to have the majority of folks on the committee that would decide who gets funded and how much. So we ultimately could outvote any of.
That's good.
So if we stuck together as a group, who knows, there may be a program that if Bobby's on and is more familiar and she says, wait a second, you guys don't see the value in this program. They do, I do, so I'm going to vote that way. So be it. I think that's okay because I think it brings different points of view to.
Thank you. And I would like to I'm interested to be part of the team, of the committee.
Yeah, I noted when I put out the email, anybody who's interested, you need to know. It's not something where you just show up to a meeting. There's a lot of homework. You got to read proposals. You got to score them. You got to understand them. This would require, I think, meetings that would occur during the day, business day. They wouldn't necessarily be night meetings.
Yeah, I would think that there would be some a lot of work hour time because not a lot of people are going to give up their free time.
Staff element, they're not going to be here at 8 o'clock at night.
I was thinking, I would love it during my work hours.
So keep that in mind. It's a good deal of homework before you actually meet, and then the meetings themselves will typically occur during the day. So factor that into your thought process if that's really what you want to do.
Oh, I'd be afraid because I don't work, so I would love to.
No, I know. I'm just,
You know that.
there's a lot of, like I said, there's a lot of homework.
Yep.
Filling out forms. I hate being on selection committees. So if I can avoid it, I'm going to be off of this because I know what's involved. And, but if it's something you're interested in, just keep that in mind.
I would like to be.
Ron?
No, I think this is really good, because we were talking previously about having community programs and partners be a resource to our students. So I think that's a plus, because even in doing this outside of the Board of Ed, I noticed that there's a lot of parents who don't know that these programs even exist. So that's why the kids are not getting the different resources. So I think it's going to be good exposure for the programs, but better support for our district. So I think it's a win-win.
I do. I think what
Yeah.
you're saying is important because there are some programs out there that may be able to serve 20 kids and that's all they can serve.
Right.
You know, it could be a coding program and they can serve 20 kids and they can do a cohort for 8 weeks. And then maybe hopefully do another cohort for 8 weeks. But they could probably service 40 kids, but they don't have the money,
Do it.
that startup money. So if they had that and gives them an opportunity, that's great. So again, I think they said there was an overwhelming response.
I read it.
Yeah.
I already hold down 2 jobs. I'm okay. Yeah.
All right, before we move on, any more questions?
I have another question, and it's
About the
about,
budget at all?
thank you, Mr. Chair. The question is for Marlene Siegel. Marlene Siegel, are you there?
Yes.
Thank you. I have a question for you, and I don't know if you can answer me. Why our security of Bridgeport schools not getting overtime and police officers they are getting? Because I know the 9 schools that don't account.
I'm sorry. I don't really think that's a,
Okay.
yeah,
Because we were talking about financing the budget, so I just want to bring it.
Lieutenant Greg.
I think that might be more of a personnel question.
What was the question?
Why we're utilizing police officers instead of security for,
The security is not getting overtime.
I don't know,
But
that's,
it's bizarre. I don't know where you get that.
Yeah, I'm not sure where that's coming from. I can tell you right now.
I just bring it because we talk about the budget, financials. I just want to question that's all. But if it's going to be
well,
personal or another committee,
if we got
I'm
a
fine.
ready answer, it's not really that far out of the realm of the budget, but
Okay.
Security overtime for what? I'm not understanding what we would give.
Our securities, let's see any security, they need to get overtime in the Bridgeport school.
They don't need to get. So what happens is when there's an event in a school, for example, Lieutenant Grech will decide if security detail is needed. For example, tonight, there's probably 5 guards that are working overtime for adult education, Monday through Thursday. That's something that is customary. There's no police officers here. There was a time we did utilize one police officer until the lights were done in the parking lot, because we had an incident with people going to a dark parking lot at night and being approached by outside individuals. But there's this misconception that we're paying all this police overtime, and that is a false idea that is created by the union.
When you say police from the city, I'm gonna talk about security, our security from schools.
talk about SROs.
So
I think what he's trying
I don't
to,
want you confused that people say the police, we're talking about the police from the city.
No.
The security is from our security, the one,
We only use overtime when it's necessary. So for example, they thought there should be a security guard at the backpack giveaway. Why would you have security guard at a backpack giveaway on a Saturday outdoors?
but it's not that they say when the building is open, you need to have a security.
No, that's already gone to Weathersfield, to the labor board, and it is at the discretion of the school district on whether an event requires security or not. We don't have to hire security because there's an event at a school. The doors are open, we have to have a guard. That is false. That's already been decided at the labor board. And there continues to be this idea that every time we have an event and we don't hire a guard for overtime, that we have to have a grievance filed. And we're going to continue, and labor relations continues to deal with that. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Okay, thank you. No more questions, Mr. Chair.
What was the security guard going to do at the backpack giveaway? For what?
No, I'm not talking especially for the
Grab the
back.
backpack? What were they going to do?
No, I was not talking about the back cap. I'm talking about,
It's one of the examples that we
Yeah.
just got a ruling on from labor because it was taken to the labor
they
relations.
called my attention, they tell me anyway that I said, well, me to study there, why you don't go talk to him? He wants to give the answer. I will not give the answer to the person if I don't know. But I'm not talking about the background, I'm talking about normal, about our security guards from Bridgeport schools not getting overtime, but the police officers are getting overtime. But that's bringing it under the committee, and now we're bringing more.
Officer overtime is not our concern. That's the concern of.
No, no, I'm okay.
Yeah.
I just want to care about my security guard, that's why that was my question.
I think,
But Ms. Siegel, you should say to ask Lieutenant Gregg, so I will ask him.
I was
gonna say, it all starts with Lieutenant Gregg. He is in charge of overall security.
Mhm.
So anytime anything happens, he makes some kind of an evaluation of if any kind of presence is needed, whether it's a guard or a police officer. Because clearly, we all know, police officers have powers that guards simply do not. And so if there's something going on where he feels he needs an officer, you know, like maybe there's a rivalry football game going on where there could be, you know, some unruliness, where you need a police officer to maybe arrest someone if need be. He's going to make that determination. But if it's an event like you're talking about, the backpack, he's going to look at it and say that this looks pretty clean. I don't anticipate there being any issues, so I'm not going to assign anyone, guard or police. So it all starts with his discretion. And it's really based on whether he thinks he needs to have somebody there with police power or just a presence there to, you know, guide people along in the form of a guard. So I think every scenario is different.
Yeah, I hope in the facility, you bring a remote tell you about security, so they can bring out good information about that.
I keep hearing, so I feel like there's some scuttlebutt circulating among the ranks of guards that they're being aced out of overtime in favor of police officers, when really, I don't think there's a whole lot of overtime, even for the police.
I'm going to give you a great example. I don't know, I forget now, it's been, it's got to be, I don't know how many years ago. Lighthouse doesn't hire a security officer for Lighthouse anymore. They went to a staff member they call a climate specialist. It's cheaper for them. It's just easier for them. That's so.
But is that person certified to be a security guard? He can take care.
They don't.
It's not a security.
They don't hire. They don't. It's a climate specialist that they call.
But it's inside one of the buildings, right? Our Bristol school. So
in our buildings every day for Lighthouse. And that's been that way for years. And Tammy doesn't have to hire a security guard if she doesn't want to. The program runs smoothly. I mean, let's be honest. If you go to Staples High School, they don't have a security guard.
Question, no, I'm just thinking of building use policy and the stuff that applies to most people that they got. It doesn't require a security guard? I know it requires cleaning and stuff like that. No, it doesn't require a security guard at all?
No.
Okay.
It requires, I think, minimum overtime of like 4 hours for a janitor.
For a custodian, yeah.
Custodian.
They have different, minimums in terms of opening buildings, but, this idea that we need all this presence, these are our kids. I mean, they're kids.
I just want to bring it, so we can move the question, Mr. Chair, we can bring it that more, talk about in the facility committee, more about the security.
I mean, Marlene could give us pre-COVID, our security costs are what, Marlene, a year? When you add in overtime for games and everything else, over $5 million?
Yes, that's about right. Yes.
It's a lot of money.
That's just for overtime.
That's for security in general, including overtime. Salary, benefits, and overtime, over $5 million.
No more question, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. On that note, may or may not require, but I'm more comfortable that this thing did come through our committee for the joint committee, so I would like to seek a motion putting our blessing on it. I seek a motion to recommend to the full board that we enter into a joint committee with the city of Bridgeport concerning the pooling of ARP and ESSER funds with a dollar amount of $2 million to be pooled with the city.
Move.
I'll second that. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
You gonna see that gets on the agenda, please?
Sure.
And now I'll take that, a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Oh, motion carries. Yeah. How long are you gonna let me see again?
Yeah.
I thought this would take a little longer.